Welcome to the Run Your Day podcast, a show dedicated to helping you expand your capacity, take your life in every area to an entirely new level, and creating a day and a life by design. Here's your host, Dan Hafner. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Run Your Day podcast. As always, your host, Dan Hafner here. And I want to thank you guys for joining. Got a special guest for you today. We've been having a lot of guests recently, just kind of going through one of those phases, I guess. But today I have with me Katrina Julia, who is a multi-passionate entrepreneur, a lifestyle and transformation expert. She's an influencer marketing and digital marketing guru, which is always exciting. And she is the creator and CEO of Fit Life Creation, which is an interesting type of business here. And we're going to talk a little bit about with her. Hey, Katrina, how you doing? Welcome into the show.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan, for having me, and love what you're doing with Running Your Day and so much of what I've listened to already, which I'll definitely share.
Oh, I appreciate that, as always. So, so I guess just start off, tell us a little bit about you and your background and what you do.
So, wow. I love to say that I've lived 1,000 lives because I feel like I have this, ever since I was a little kid, a never-ending adventure in life. And that started with me being conceived in Bulgaria, born in Poland, in a refugee camp in Italy, and in the US by the time I was 2. And every single part of my life kind of follows that sort of adventurous theme. From the start of my life into shifts with my mind, into shifts with wellness, into shifts with marketing, with money, with business and travel. It's this never-ending theme of transformation and reinvention. Things like, leaving corporate 7 years ago, things like traveling to 27 countries, things like figuring out what, my calling is and figuring out a lifestyle brand. So in every sense of that, I always say also that I'm a never-ending student.
That's awesome. That's very awesome. And I know how it goes with all that figuring out stuff. Like it almost never ends, right? And side note, you said you were born in Poland, right?
I was.
That's awesome. I'm Polish. So yes, Polish people unite.
I was going to ask you with your last name because I recognized it, but then I wasn't so sure because there's no accent. But yeah, I was born in Katowice in 1978.
Okay. Well, Hafner's German, but we do have a lot of Polish in there. We make pierogies every year for Christmas. It's a great time. So
that's awesome. We had our first Christmas actually last year where me, my parents, my brother, his wife, niece, nephew were all together for the first time in 25 years in Bulgaria. So yeah.
Wow. That's really cool.
And all the things. Polski borscht, if you're familiar with
yeah. Yeah. Nice. I love those Polish mistakes too. Anyway, too much Polish talk on here. Not that everyone doesn't love to talk about that stuff, but let's so I had a question for you. I did a little bit of research on you, and I saw that you went through quite a weight loss transformation. You said that you lost 55 pounds.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So 55 pounds, thank you, over now 5 years ago, between 2013 and 2014. And what I really want to point out is, number one, it took 1.5 years. Number two, for years before then, I had tried so many different things, and I always made it about the short term, as opposed to, which leads me to my third point, making it a lifestyle and really, really setting up myself for success, but also setting up other people. So developing a system of tips, of tools, of technology, and, constantly, you run. So you get it. There's a constant challenge and you've never arrived, sort of thing. And through that, it involved, healthy habits, and still it does. It involved giving up alcohol. Now haven't drank for over 5 years. It involved Herbalife nutrition, and it still does. Meal bags, competing in fitness shows, so many different segments. And even now, we're in the middle, obviously, of a global pandemic. I clearly, like some people are choosing to compete, and do different things because some, organizations are still holding competitions. But because of safety and travel and different things, I'm choosing not to. So I realized, okay, well, how can I still hold a new level of accountability? How can I still challenge myself in a new way? And I made the decision, being in Atlanta, to not go to the gym. And I discovered Peloton. And I've been on the digital app now the last 60 days. And the gamifying, the recognition, those tying into those human drives, those milestones. So I just believe in really, really hacking into your own self-awareness and what motivates you. And that's ultimately what I was able to do along with my faith, because, like you said, like every day is not easy. And it was over a year and a half, and it never ends. Like, just because it's now 5 years later, I mean, running a mile or 10 miles or whatever it is, like, just because you've been doing it for years doesn't mean every time is easy.
100%. And it kind of reminded me of a quote. And it doesn't really, it applies to this, but it's this quote I read the other day. It said, motivation is like bathing. It's recommended daily, right? And I think that applies here, right? Like, just because you go for one run or you do one workout one day on Monday, that doesn't pay for Friday's toll, right? So that's interesting. That's very interesting. I like that. So that's really cool. So you did also mention something else that I kind of wanted to pick your brain about. It's called this six pack of wealth, six
Yes,
pack of wealth concept. Can you tell us a
yes,
little bit about that? What is that?
absolutely. So, like many of us, a lot of times people talk about a six pack of abs, right?
Yeah.
And through my own transformation, and shockingly, when I got my own six pack of abs, and I have a big part of my story and my background is related to money. As a CPA, serving with 7+ industries, a lot of things. So that side of my brain is also always on. And so when I was walking through not only my health transformation, but I started to walk massively through a money transformation in every way. So for years, and a lot of people I'm sure relate to this, I sacrificed my own desires, passion, and purpose, for other people. That's usually what a lot of us saw growing up. So it was normal, right? But at the same time, that led me, like many of us, to develop a lot of scarcity mindsets, a lot of lack thinking, not aligned to faith, not aligned to abundance. And so as I was walking through my own transformation in money, I developed what I call the six pack of wealth. And it ties to 6 behaviors in money. And through several years, it's almost like my brain was being rewired and reordered in the way that we approach money. And it's also never ending in the same sense that health is. So number one is creating. That we all have the power to create wealth, but not all of us believe that. And so we don't take the necessary actions to do that. Like even Deuteronomy 8:18 says that, but a lot of times in church, they don't talk about that. Which, so again, that ties to cultural influences that are not necessarily in our best interest. Then the second component is giving. So when you give, no matter what you believe, that's saying to, the world that, hey, I believe I am enough, and I believe I have more than enough, and I believe it's not just about me, that I want to give to help others, whether it's money, whether it's time, all of that. So that's number two. The third component is saving. So a lot of times also we're driven by cultural influences, especially in the United States. Spend, spend, spend. Keep up with the Joneses. Get the debt. You need it now. You can't wait. Like for me now, thankfully, like the scarcity mindset of, oh, the sale's going to be over. You're never going to get this item if you don't buy it now. Like that doesn't work on me anymore. Because I'm like, it's 2020. Okay, maybe it's a global pandemic. Maybe I had to wait a couple of times for toilet paper, but it's 2020. Like it's good. The deal is going to come again. Like, whatever. So creating, giving, saving, and saving to take care of yourself, saving to have, a month, 3 months, 6 months of saving so that when a pandemic happens, I bought 7 cars, and true story, I had 7 cars by the time I was 30. So I don't share any of this from a space of judgment. I share this from I've lived it and I've seen the consequences and the mistakes that, it cost me along the way. Mm-hmm. So I get it. So creating, giving, savings. Then the fourth component is investing. So many people have this mindset, whether they're, working for someone or entrepreneurs or whatever the case is, they think they're just going to figure it out without investing. And I'm sorry, like whether you invest your time, your money in resources and community and tools, like you have to invest. Hello, like I went to school, or like whenever any of us went to school, whether it was elementary, middle school, high school, college, whatever, you invested that time to learn. Even if it's free resources on YouTube, it's still a concept of investment. Like, even though, I'm a coach and, I help create communities, I always am in a minimum of 3 to 4 communities myself to constantly keep my brain being up leveled. And I always say, a lot of, I can't remember who first said this, but, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Like, I want to be like one of the stupidest people in the room.
I like that.
Or maybe not the stupidest, because I believe like we all have value no matter what stage you're at, but I want to be in a stage of humility. Like, I think that's another thing that many of us have lost. And I also walk through that. You have this, it's really easy. You have these results, you have these accomplishments, you have this degree, you have this title, and you start to develop. It's really easy to become proud or arrogant. Like, it's really easy. Mm-hmm. So creating, giving, saving, investing, leverage, which includes leveraging tips, leveraging tools, and leveraging teams. So same thing, whether it's a virtual assistant, whether it's a technology, whether it's a coach, like it's leveraging technology, like automating your social, repurposing things. It goes so many different ways. And then the sixth one is spending. So years ago, what I realized, developing like self-awareness and so much like revelations, was that I used to put spending first. Like, I would spend before I even had the money. But then when I was managing other people's money or helping, companies create wealth, I could easily help them create, 6, 7, 8 figures. And so when I started really diving deep into that, I was like, what is wrong with my brain and my sense of self-worth? So, a lot of that, as you can hear, has been a ton of personal transformation and sharing along the way through those 6 behaviors. And so I tied it to like 6-pack of abs, but you can see how the 6-pack of wealth, it never ends.
Yeah, I like that. So just to sum up for everyone, that was creating, giving, saving, investing, leveraging, and spending. And like you said, spending's at the bottom of that list. I'm starting to go through that phase myself. So that's good. I think that's very, very useful. Thank you for that. So now you do talk a lot about, all these different transformations you've been through. And if anyone looks you up, they can definitely see a lot of the different things that you've had going on and that you're doing. So one thing I like to share with my audience on here, at least, is like actionable tips, right? Like actual practical things, which so many people get lost in the theory and the concept of things. But like, so what actionable tips, would you give someone to maybe stay on track with like a morning routine, or, a goal, or, a short or long-term goal? What are like some actionable tips?
So I'm going to make it first really simple. And then I'm going to dive into some themes of like how I break it down to really give people the practical application of what it looks like. So number 1 is start. The same way you say in your episode, don't ever fucking quit, like start.
Yeah.
Stop with the paralysis of analysis. Stop with the, I'm going to start tomorrow. No, start. Like, do something. Because our brains are either wired to change our beliefs, or when we take action, it rewires our beliefs. And ultimately it happens, to align all the above, including our feelings. And so number 1 is start. Number 2 is simplicity. Number 3 is develop a strategy. Meaning like the strategy that works for me, like, is a framework, but like what you apply and how you apply it, like you might run more, or you may do more shows on a podcast, or you might, kill Instagram. Like the how doesn't matter. It's setting up the strategy and tying it to your ultimate vision for your life. So many people don't have vision. They don't know where they're going. They're like, oh, I want 1 billion followers on Instagram. Okay, why? Like, what do you want that impact to mean? Like, I think a lot of that is where we've gotten lost. Number 4 is structure, like structuring your day, which I'm going to dive into that in the details. And number 5 is systems. Because when you have systems that start to like program in your brain, like every day, more or less, my morning routine's the same, it becomes easier. Like even when I don't feel like it, like I'm not going to sit here and say I feel like it all the time, because sometimes I wake up not in a great mood, but I know, like, right? And then I know that it's a system and it's designed to help me instead of just self-sabotage. Do you have any questions on that part before I dive in deeper?
No, I'm just sitting here smiling and agreeing with all of this. So yes, please continue.
Okay. Because I like to honor it, like it is your show. So with that, and this also goes through my own, crazy ass transformation, is number 1, jumpstart. Because jumpstart, and this, I talk about this in my 14-day challenge, it's on the blog, it's on the show, but jumpstart has to do with start. Like pick something. Is it your health? Is it your money? Is it your business? Take some sort of aligned action with what you say you actually want. You want to lose weight? Well, stop buying the stuff that's causing you to gain weight. Like that's where I started. It was the practical. You say you want to have more money? Well, stop shopping on Amazon. Like get real with yourself. The second thing is unleash inspiration, which that has to do with vision. Like get really clear on why you want something. Get really clear on like how you want to feel. Get clear on the vision you want. Like obviously you guys can't see, but Dan's gonna be able to see. You can see my vision board is right here next to me.
Yep.
Every single day I see like, okay, like the creator at the center of all, the vision I want for like my health, my money, my business, my marriage, like it's in my face. And then I have literally like scriptures or like sayings on the wall, like literally to keep my brain focused. Now, a lot of this is pandemic projects, but I still had them. But I literally said, oh, more, I need to like focus on the environment. The third thing is clutter to clarity. I journal like crazy as one example, but clarity can be your house, can be your closet. You're at home now, clean out. Because that shows up literally what's going on in your brain. Because if you have clutter, that's also a practical way I started years ago. I had clutter in my closet. I had clutter in my car. Side note, I haven't had a car for 2 years. I started clearing the clutter. Like, do I really need this? And like noticing like that's a direct correlation to the brain. The fourth thing is time to transform, which ties into, I'm going to talk about in a second, the 7 steps to success. Which ties into, actually, let me just talk about it now. It ties into spiritual, mental, emotional, relational, playful, physical, and financial. And keep in mind, for anyone listening, I didn't get here overnight. I'm talking about a 7 to 10 year journey.
Mm-hmm.
And the actions I take now are radically different than last year, the year before, the year before. It's growth. It never stops. The fifth thing is smart social, which goes into how much time I spend on social media. Where do I automate? Where do I delegate? Where do I get VAs? Because again, I'm not trying to get my life sucked into social media. Like podcasts are great. They're great long form content. Instagram's great. Pinterest is great. But I have zero desire for me or anyone I connect with to like live on the social platform. That's what they're designed to do. The creators of Instagram want you on Instagram. Pinterest wants you on Pinterest. But is that the best use of your time? You can still accomplish whatever you want without like your life on the platform. The sixth component is moneymaker, because now you can see all the foundational components are going into more and more. Okay, now from this space of clarity, of abundance, of action, now let's dive into money and the 6-pack of wealth. Then it goes into the business, the boss brand. That then flows into websites. Like, what do your websites look like? Being website wonder, and whether you do it or you delegate it. Then it goes into scaling. Are you simplifying? Are you automating? Are you delegating? Like, I love Kajabi. That's one of our biggest tools I use all the time. Anchor is a great tool. We just talked about that beforehand. That's another way to scale and simplify. And then it goes into community, like never, ever, ever losing sight of inspiring influence. And that you don't do this for yourself. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm talking to myself, obviously, and I'm sure you do. Like you talked about, like, you're like, oh, I need to go listen to my own episode, because like sometimes you're the only one there.
Yeah.
But then, eventually people show up. And that's another thing. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be an instant, sensation overnight. Like, yes, you have something valuable to give. And some of you may, all of a sudden have, start doing something, and all of a sudden, everyone has a different journey. Things start happening. But a lot of us, depending on your vision, you have to walk through a lot of stuff to build your character, to build your persistence. And then the last component, and this is where I get into 90-day plans and things like this, and that's also on my show on the blog, is momentum maker. Like, how do you make momentum? So, I'm giving you all this. So a lot of times, like you said, people might be like, okay, well, where do I start? You start. Then the second thing is you think about, what does your morning look like? Do you have things that are feeding you? Do you have a structure around your morning? I do what I call a sacred 7. Then I follow my 7 steps to success throughout the day. Am I doing at least 3 actions that are aligned in those 7 areas? Then I have a create 7 with my business that are 7 things like media, like series, etc. And then I have a goal 7, meaning like, what are my focus points, and is what I'm taking action on aligned? Because I'm like squirrel. If I don't have structure, I'll go 10,000 different directions because I get excited by so much. So it's knowing your own mind. And then I close the day with, okay, gratitude, what went really well, like my celebrates, because nothing, like, ultimately, when you see people at a pinnacle point in the top 1% of our world, there are billions of actions that it took to get them there. And that's what we forget, because we want to arrive and we think, oh, I'm going to arrive here and my life is going to be peaches and cream. First of all, like, nothing is ever peaches and cream, because just like there's stuff to deal with at different levels of growth, even with your certain success points, there's a lot of responsibility and a lot of accountability of people that rest upon you. And do you have the character? And these are questions I ask for myself. Do you have the character to uphold that? And that's what the crappy times are for. Like you said in your episode, like, don't quit. Like, you're going to go through hard times.
Yeah. And just there's so much I could add to that, but I think one thing that stuck out to me as I heard that was just kind of like you closed there, like this whole concept of a vision, right? Because that's what gets you through the crap. Like, that's, and honestly, and I've said this, maybe I haven't said it explicitly when I started my show, right? Like, when I started this whole process to be like an entrepreneur, I was like, I'm going to make money. I'm going to do it to make money. And then that quickly fades, right? That quickly fades. And that's what I'm trying to talk more about as I go through this. And that's just kind of been my personal journey lately, is been this deeper search for that purpose and at least getting back to it. And because anyone that I talk to, I hear people all the time, like, I'm doing this for the money. I'm like, good luck. So I'm glad. No, that's it's a lot of information, but that was very, very good. Very, very good.
Awesome. I love that you said that. And it says, I was sitting here like cheering you guys, because it's one of those things, like, you need to repeat for the people in the back, because people think you're going to get to this money point. And like, obviously you've probably been there in different segments of your life. I was there. And when you get there, if it's not aligned to who you are, you realize if the passion and purpose isn't there, it is empty.
It is.
You will feel your soul sucked.
Yeah, it is. And I've been there. I know what it is. So, okay. So great. So let's kind of tie this into your business, right? So let's talk a little bit about, tell us about Fit Life Creation, and, how did you grow that? What, tell us more about it.
Absolutely. So a couple of things. So similar to your point, I lost weight. I was still at the time in straddling corporate, so to speak. I was straddling corporate, doing projects. And at the time, I ended up sharing my story on Facebook of my before and after my weight loss, and of how I had lost, the 55 plus pounds, how I was competing. And all of a sudden that year, my business started blowing up 25 times. And so, disclaimer, not typical, but possible. And I was like, okay, I could do this. I could keep going on the same trajectory and focusing solely on the wellness component. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people do that. But I really started to dig deep. And I was like, okay, God, like, what is my purpose? What am I here on the planet for? And was all that history of what I've walked through, and I know a lot of people in the global pandemic right now, have lost their jobs, have lost their income, and they're facing a lot of these same questions. Was that all wasted? And I felt a resounding no. You walk through the wealth journey, you've walked through this business journey, you've traveled to all these countries. All this is a foundation for what is going to happen with this business and what's happening next. So I realized, just like through my own journey, I was going through all these programs and coaches. I said, you know what? I would really love if there was an all-in-one lifestyle brand that I could go to one place and get tons of creators, from different, aspects of business. If I could get the health, the money, the business all in one, online and live, with, the online courses, with the blog, with the show, with the retreats, normally, not right now. And if I could do things with influencers, because I recognize that success from story sharing, that I said, well, wait a minute, if I can do this on Facebook and people are doing this on Instagram, what if we create a whole community of creators in short to long-term collaborations that are doing the same thing? We've had influencers now for over a year in the programs. So I started envisioning this. And obviously back in 2014, 15, didn't look nothing like the clarity you see today. It was like a tiny, tiny, tiny mustard seed. It was like, hey, I see it as a vision. Like, it was super simple, all-in-one lifestyle brand. And with time, it developed into experiences, influencers, fundraisers, the automation, the delegation, the figuring out, all the things. So it's been quite the journey, as you can imagine.
Oh, I can. And that's a cool thing. I'm glad that you hit on, because that's one thing I've found out in my own personal journey, and things that I think a lot of people try to shortcut. Like you said, that people want to have that, like, well, I could just make this like super awesome, cool lifestyle brand, and like it could do this, and I could delegate this, and I could get a VA for this. But you're putting the cart 87,000 steps in front of the horse, right? And I've done this. I've done this too. Like, I'm guilty of that. But and I think, like you said earlier, it kind of ties back to humility and being like, okay, like kind of going back to the start and being like, okay, like what's first, right? And then just starting. And that's the biggest piece I like to always give people, is just to just start one thing and build in momentum on there. So that's great. So,
well, what's first, like you said, and then also being humble enough to pivot. Like, this year is the year of pivoting. Like, no one had 2020 the way it looks on their vision board. Like, yes, I have a vision board, but I never imagined 2020 as is. None of us did.
Yeah, 100%. So, well, that's awesome. So, I mean, that kind of answered my next question, honestly, was, how does it all tie together with the health, the wealth, the fitness, the travel? So that's really cool. So, I guess before we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to ask me? I usually give people one question to ask me. So I'll give you a shot.
Absolutely. So I was reading an article that actually got posted, I think by you. Oh, no, by you on Medium. And one of the things you talked about, which I absolutely love, is fear is not real and consistency is difficult. And you've got Run Wage, Run Your Day. You've got several different things going on as well on your hands, and several things. So how do you frame your mind around fear is not real, and then staying consistent even when, and especially when it is difficult, and dive in however you want to dive into that? Because I think
that's a good question. That's a good question. So I really like what you said earlier about kind of how you structure your day with your sacred 7, or your 7 goals and things like that. And it's funny you reference that, because that had to be a long time ago. But in terms of that, like, I start almost every day when I wake up, like there is fear. There is doubt. There's tons of worthiness issues. Like, man, like what's the purpose? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And I think just honestly, over time, maybe I don't have the right structures or things in place for it, but for me, over time, I think it's a mental muscle of being able to push through that and compartmentalize that into, okay, no, that's not real. That's just a thought. And a lot of it comes back to my morning routine, right? I do a thing through a program I'm part of called Wake Up Warrior. That's called the Core Four, right? And for me, that's my morning routine, and that in itself like purges everything that is ever going on in my mind about that, right? So then the cool part about that is what that ties to is this idea of production, of actually doing the things that you need to do, right? And it's impossible, I find it impossible on a daily basis to be able to actually produce the things I need to produce to do this podcast even some days, right? If I'm not in a place of power, if I'm just like, man, I didn't go for a run today, I didn't do my meditation, I didn't really do anything, and I just kind of want to do, you know what I mean? So like it gets to this point where for me, staying consistent comes through the systems in your life, like the getting very clear on that why, getting very clear on that vision, which I'm still working through, to be honest with you, um, and compartmentalizing it and kind of just, and it comes back to what you said earlier, just taking action, just, and everything started to change for me and started to blow up big time when I took imperfect action, when I just started doing stuff. Like I just started emailing people and I just started doing this podcast and I just started, like, honestly, and there was so much fear around, well, um, this isn't going to be good, or people are going to laugh at me, or it's not going to work, or I'm going to get made fun of, or whatever. And once I was just like, screw that shit. Like, I don't need that. I don't have time for that. And just did it. Like, yeah, I got mixed results, but then eventually it was like those people go away and then you just have your true fans, you know? So for me, that's a very, very good question. That's a very good question.
Well, it goes back to, I think a lot of times, Dan, people focus too much on the destination and they don't enjoy the journey and they don't realize that there's a lot of stuff and you mentioned this in that same episode that you said there are things that happen in the journey that you need, in that. And I love what you said with that, with the power, that you are coming from a place of power, versus victimhood, right? And then you also obviously have a morning routine with Wake Up Warrior. And then what I also heard, and I think it's really important for people to realize, I'm even amazed at the time that I take, and it sounds like you are too to some degree, of like self-love compared to like 10 years ago. And I'm amazed that actually I'm way more productive and I feel much better because of that foundation. And when you think about it, school doesn't teach us that. Most of our parents didn't grow up like that. Like, this is a relatively new thing. And then the last two components you talked about is the imperfect action, which is really perfect because it's unveiling your next steps. But it's like school and culture in a lot of ways will say, oh, you get an F on this because you didn't memorize this. Or you get an F on this because you didn't write the essay exactly how I wanted. Or your boss tells you, oh, well, we're not going to promote you because ABC 1, 2, 3, when really it has to do with their own budget and their own issues internally that you have no idea what's going on. Now, granted, some of us all got promotions along the way, but my point in all that is we have so much conditioning that does not serve in the journey of entrepreneurship. And I think like you were really, really highlighting that. And that's definitely what that's what I was looking for.
Cool. Good. Well, I'm glad that was a good question. I might have to go back and listen to that one because that's some deep stuff. So, okay, I guess we'll just wrap up the show then. So just tell everyone, how they can get or connect with you or find out more about what you have to offer.
Absolutely. You can find me at fitlifecreation.com. On social, it's either at Katrina Julia Fit or at Fit Life Creation.
So that's fitlifecreation.com.
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. So yeah, we'll go ahead and add that here in the show notes for you guys. So you can check out everything that Katrina's got going on. Katrina, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate you. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. It'd be really awesome. I'm definitely going to be following you and everything that you have going on because you guys need to go over and check out that fitlifecreation.com. It's really, really cool. She's got some really cool stuff going on. So Again, thank you very much, Katrina. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining this episode. That's going to be a wrap for it. As always, Dan Hafner signing off. Make it a great rest of your day.